Right. So essentially what we do is put collars like these on cows and use sound and shock stimulus to influence where those animals spend their time on the landscape. But virtual fencing is really a whole lot more than simply replacing the physical infrastructure on the ranch. It really opens up the possibilities of what you're able to do and changes the way you're able to manage the ranch. We've got 3 goals at Fence. The first is to help you be profitable. The second is to help you manage your land and your animals. And the third is to help ensure that the operation is healthy and sustainable so that it can be passed on to the next generation and working ranches can remain working ranches. So profitability, stewardship, and legacy. Now, a couple quick examples of what that can look like in the real world. There it is, beautiful. So this is Bryce Lewis. He's in the Arkansas River Valley. And I really like to show this picture because it's a great illustration of the type of ground that we work on. Arkansas River Valley kind of runs through the middle there. Across is the Collegiate Peaks. Those go up to 14,000 foot. We actually have a base station about halfway up there on a comm site. And then where we're standing here and this picture is taken, that's Limestone Ridge. We have another base station there. And all this below us, those are the Mosquitoes, kind of like a rocky, crumbly, hilly, older type of mountains. And that's all Bryce's ground. Forest Service permit, about 25,000 acres. And Bryce has been on the system going on his 4th season. He's been able to do some really amazing things. I think the 2 most important that I'll point out to you are number 1, now he knows where his animals are at. He used to spend a lot of time driving around, riding around, looking for cows, and now he can simply pull out his cell phone. He knows exactly where his animals are at, and he knows where they've been historically. So he can save all that time that he used to spend riding around and think about how he actually wants to manage those animals. And the second piece is now he actually has control as to where they spend their time and where they graze. A while back, he put in some water infrastructure and it was all up high and he used to push the animals up and they come right back down. He pushed the animals up the next day and then they would come right back down. So he really wasn't able to utilize any of the feed on the upper part of his allotment. Now he's able to push them up there, actually hold them, rest what's down low, and he's greatly elongated his grazing season. He's got 2 Forest Service permits and a great relationship with the office there, so he's actually able to graze year-round, which has dramatically reduced his feed input costs, and at the same time he's enlarged his herd size. So a really great example of someone taking the system and using it to become more profitable. Second story here is Dana Camlin. This is in northwest Colorado. This piece of ground is called the Bitterbrush. It's about 15,000 acres, really pretty part of the country. And Dana's family used to own this ground. They sold it to Colorado Parks and Wildlife in the 90s, and they just got the permit to graze it again about 3 years ago, which Dana's super excited about. Her family's been out there a long time, they love this piece of ground. The only problem is CPW is managing it for sage grouse and pronghorn, and they really don't want a lot of physical infrastructure out there that's going to impact the wildlife. But Dana's really progressive in the way she manages. She runs polywire, very soil health minded, and she wants to manage the way that she wants to manage. So what they did was purchase a couple base stations, put collars on cows. Now Dana's actually able to kind of step and rotationally graze across the Bitterbrush. CPW gets really good grazing pressure from their partner in operation, and there's no impact to the wildlife. So a really good example of 2 different parties coming together and creating value and stewarding the landscape. Fence system, how it actually works. 3 different components. There's the collar that goes on animal, the base station that we use to create the network across the ranch that the collars communicate through, and the herd manager software, which producers will log into on their laptop or their desktop computer. That's where you build your virtual fence lines and analyze any of the data that the collars are collecting. So this is the collar right here, version 2.5 I would say. 2 chains, one's positive, one's negative. That's where the electric stimulus is delivered. Plastic loop at the top, break in the circuit. That will also break at about 650 pounds of pull force in case an animal gets hung up on a tree, T-post, anything like that. And then we've got some locking carabiners to adjust for size. And then inside the collar, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on, but the most important pieces to know about are a radio chip that talks back and forth with the base station. That's how we get data in and out of the collar. There is a GPS chip, and that's listening to the satellite to fix the collar's location. We're not transmitting information back and forth, but we're simply listening so that the collar knows where it's at. And then a battery. And the standard life on a battery is kind of 6 to 9 months for a Forest Service BLM type operation, extensive grazing, and it's going to be a bit shorter than that if you're rotationally grazing or having smaller pastures. So virtual fence, we think of it less as like a hard line in the sand where we're very clearly in and very clearly out, and we think of it more as a pressure zone. There's water pressure, feed pressure, herd pressure, topography pressure, and virtual fence is just another layer of pressure, but it's one that we can artificially control the timing and the location of, which makes it a really interesting tool. So on the screen here, you can see the white zone, that's the sound zone, followed by the red zone. That's basically the sound plus shock zone. So what that looks like, I don't know if I had a laser pointer, but animal will move into the sound zone, they get a beat from the collar, an auditory cue to basically turn around and return to the herd, and if they continue on into the sound plus shock zone, it's a beat plus a shock. And this is set up as a one-way gate. So if an animal does make it through, let's say a calf pulls them out, storm, something like that, they move into this area here beyond that 300 or so feet of pressure, no sound, no shock. But if they want to turn around and return to the herd or come back to water, they can actually move the opposite way through that virtual fence line, no sound, no shock, but as soon as they're back inside, the virtual fence line turns back on. So one-way gate with passive recapture. We allow a little bit of permeability to the virtual fence line because our ultimate goal is in 100% containment 100% of the time, and we would love that, but even with physical infrastructure, we don't think that's realistic. So our ultimate goal is to put the majority of the grazing pressure where we want it the majority of the time and use the collar as a land management tool. This is a base station, another fundamental component to the system. Aluminum hut, 3 foot by 4 foot footprint, pretty light. You can put this back on the back of a UTV, drive it up to the site. We've even hiked them in the last little bit, which is a bit of an effort, but can be a lot of fun. And 3 components I like to break it down into: power system, solar panel, batteries. We can get this set up wherever we need to from a power perspective. We have a skinny white antenna at the top here. That's our LoRa or LoRaWAN antenna, if anybody's interested in the radio technology. Low power, low data. It's what we use to communicate with the callers. And then we have a cellular backhaul. It's this trapezoid looking white antenna right here. And we don't need cell coverage across the entire ranch. We don't need cell coverage where the callers go, but we do want to signal specifically where the base station's at. And the golden question is always, how many acres does a base station cover? It's a great question. The range on a base station is really good. It's a 10-mile radius. We designed the system for extensive beef grazing operations, Forest Service, BLM, big stuff in the American West. But we also can't violate the laws of physics and go through a mountain or down into a gully. So we do what's called an RF plan, or radio frequency plan, for each operation that I work with. We'll take the maps from you guys, we'll pull it up on Google Earth. This example here is in Carbondale, Colorado. It's up in the mountains. It's about 35,000-ish acres, I think. There's actually a ski area right here. It's not aspen, but sunlight, so it gives you an idea of what the topography looks like there. And then we'll take GPS coordinates and try out a whole bunch of different sites that are potentials. We may look at 15 sites and end up going with 4 of them, right? But it's a kind of an iterative process about access, cell connection, all that. And then each of these little orange dots here, that's a potential base station location. We radio map it, it spits out these images that you see on the screen here. The green's exactly what we want to see, good coverage, we can communicate with the callers there. The blues, things start to trail off a little bit, but we can still communicate. And then you'll notice there's still some kind of like dead zones here that look like plain old Google Earth. It's not realistic for us to have perfect 100% coverage across all these allotments that we're working on in the American West. So the way that we design the collar is, as long as you download the instruction for the virtual fence into the collar says thumbs up, I'm good to go. It can go down into these areas where we don't have coverage, and it's listening to the GPS to fix its location, and it's got the instruction for the virtual fence line saved in its memory, so it'll still get the sound, it'll still get the shock just like it's supposed to. Only thing you're not going to get in those situations is location data coming off the collar, or the ability to make a change to the virtual fence line, until that collar comes back into coverage. So we can still work in areas even where we don't have perfect coverage. We just lose a little bit of the flexibility, adaptability, and speed of the system. And this is a conversation we have with each of the operations that we work with. Last piece, herd manager software. Looks a lot like Google Earth with a bunch of different buttons. This is where you build your pastures, you can show exactly kind of gates, roads, all that kind of stuff. And then you have all the location data points of the individual animals. We also have location data history, so you can play back in a couple of different formats where those animals have spent time and use it to influence decisions. Are we overutilizing, underutilizing certain parts of this pasture? And we can actually manage down to the individual animal tracking wise. Final piece I want to touch on is our rancher success team. They're, again, a really fundamental component of the vets team. They're the ones that after you guys decide, hey, we're good to go, this is our plan, let's get us some gear shipped out, they'll take over and shepherd you through the onboarding process, through how to collar, and then all the training on the software and continue troubleshooting as you move forward in kind of your journey with fence.
My name is Justin Wells. I look after Halter for our U.S. operation. My background is mostly in tech, but I grew up in a community like this in Michigan, running horses and growing up in a dairy community. So my heart, as much as my professional career has been in technology companies, my heart is very much in this community as a whole. Halter is we're a New Zealand-based virtual fencing company. Pretty much similar technology is what you're going to see here today. But we started about 8 years ago in New Zealand. Our CEO and founder, Craig, grew up on a dairy farm, and throughout his time growing up with his family and pushing cattle on a very intensive dairy operation, he quickly realized there's got to be a better way to do this. At the time, he was working as an engineer at Rocket Labs, which is kind of like the SpaceX of New Zealand, and had an idea for controlling cows through commands and cues, and actually took it to his boss, which is Sir Peter Beck, who is kind of like the Elon Musk of New Zealand. Basically got fired on the spot for bringing the technology up, but got a $500,000 check to go do that, because that was more important than what he was doing for Rocket Lab, which is a fun story. So that was about 8 years ago. For the first, I would say, 5 years of Halter's endeavor was really around product development versus commercializing the product. We really wanted to invest time, resource, and money into making the very best product that we could. That's both ergonomical for the cow, but is also a technology where you're not having to worry about, well, how long is it going to last, or what's the ruggedness of that component. Our job is to provide you with a solution at the end of the day, and that solution should work. And if something's not working, that's on us to solve. That's on us to come out, understand your operation, and really assess why a component is not working. So similar to probably a lot of the producers up here, because we're all in this for the communities we serve, Halter's mission as a company is to enable 50% of the global landmass to be more productive and sustainable. What that materializes to in terms of the community here is we want really the cattle ranchers, the pasture-based cattle ranchers, pretty much everyone in this room, to just be more also productive and sustainable, but also profitable. We know that the way we ran operations decades ago is changing, and our job is to bring technology to market that's easy to use and enables you to put time back in your pockets. We've had producers. We were actually traveling in Texas and Kansas last week with our fifth customer ever, Pete Morgan, and he was moving his cows from Kansas to his milking shed with his staff all the way from across the globe. And he's able to take vacations, he's able to go hang out with his kids, all while having that confidence in his pocket through our solution. And for me, it was really humbling to see just someone who, for years, was running this immensely intensive dairy operation, but now has the confidence to give his staff control of their most precious commodity, the cattle. And it was just, again, really humbling to see. So, similar to what John was talking about, virtual fencing, what we're doing here is essentially, for lack of a better term, replacing that physical infrastructure with a virtual boundary. This is actually a drone shot from our Kansas partners, Mushrush Red Angus, who've been using our software for a while. And the way it works is pretty much as John laid out. You're able to put a virtual boundary down through a simple mobile app on your phone to where the cows then will receive a primary cue whenever they start encroaching that line. And you can see here in this drone shot, pretty clear as day where that line was set. If I were to draw it a little bit better for you, that's kind of what it looks like. But what happens is every one of Halter's cows gets its own algorithm. We call it a cowgorithm, cow-G, because we know every cow is unique. Every cow has a different behavior. Every cow is going to push that line different than the other cows. So this cow right here, you can tell she's curious. She's like, what's going on? She's probably hearing that beep right now. And if she doesn't cross that line or doesn't encroach that line, her interaction with the collar is going to be different than, let's say this one's real pesky and this one wants to always charge the line. This one's probably doing other stuff on your ranch that you don't want her to be doing. But she's going to receive a different intensity and interaction with that line than this cow is going to. Because we don't want to have one size fits all where every cow gets a certain buffer. If this cow is just curious and she never encroaches that line, let her do what she needs to do. She knows where that line is. Why try to give her a cue which could impact her behavior? Where this pesky cow back here, she's probably going to charge that. We're going to start giving her the auditory cue well prior to encroaching on that line. Probably be louder, and that secondary low emission pulse will probably be a little bit stronger. So one thing that we try to do is that cow rhythm, a little play on words there. Our technology, again, we've over-indexed on the product to really give you guys a solution that works, and that way there's no concerns about how long is it going to last. Our collar is a solar-powered integrated battery solution. So unlimited battery life for the collar. There's no need to change the battery. There's no need to go and charge it. What I tell people is if a collar does happen to deplete, we're going to know that before you do. We're actually going to call you and say, hey, a collar's not working. We're going to send you one out. Because at the end of the day, it's not about buying a product. It's about using a solution for your ranch. And if one collar fails, that's us. That's an us problem. That's not a you problem to have to go and replace. We want you to feel confidence in that. Similar to a lot of the technology here, utilizing a tower base station with that lower range. John, amazing job explaining that. I don't need to go into details there, but similar technology, 10-mile range based on geography, and we're able to send commands to that collar and they get stored on that collar. So again, if the cow does move away from that tower's range, you won't have to worry about that. One thing that we're really proud of is the ergonomics of this collar. I don't have the counterweight here today, but it's a few pound little weight that hangs on the bottom. But this is a soft rubber collar that sits on the backside of the cow's neck. That's really meant to be comfortable. We do a lot of ergonomic testing because we want to make sure that this is comfortable for the cow, that she is really forgets that it's on. And I was up in Montana a few months ago and we watched within 20 seconds the cows forgot that this was even on. So we really over-index on the safety of the animal, the ergonomics, and the comfort at the end of the day. We do a lot of testing with that solar as well. So being a New Zealand company, we have farms that operate on the south of the South Island, which if you guys haven't looked at a map in a while, that's basically Antarctica. They don't get a lot of sun down there in their winter. And we have farms down there that still run these collars 24/7 down there. We also put it through a pretty extensive ruggability test or durability test, which is basically just interns and cement mixers. I was in New Zealand 2 weeks ago and we literally had like 5 cement mixers lined up outside. It was really loud because we had collars in there with just rocks and they were just going for like 24 hours. Interns can do a lot of good work when you give them some cement mixers. So that's our collar. And again, we have unlimited battery life, unlimited warranty. If a product fails, that's on us. And we really, being a newer company here in the US, we just commercialized this October and we're building a team out. Again, we want the collar to work, full stop. Last year alone, our customers and users set about 130,000 miles of virtual fencing, which is enough to go around the globe 5 times. So our users are using this daily, and we're seeing where they're finding more creative ways to move their cattle and migrate their herds. And we're trusted by over 1,000 users at this point globally. We have about close to 300,000 collars globally between the countries that we operate in. What Halter does, similar again to what you're going to hear with all the panelists here, which is amazing that all this technology is as far as it is precision at your fingertips. We're giving you the ability to graze 100% of your pastures at this point. as John said, like there may be an area where you're unable to get your cattle to move to. Through this technology and the mobile app on your phone, you're able to unlock that productivity. You're able to increase pasture utilization. You're able to increase your stocking rates because you're using that commodity, the grass, to its fullest extent. And it also gives you unlimited flexibility. You can basically have endless miles of fencing. You're not going out there stringing up polywire anymore. You're really using that perimeter fence as that safety containment area. And you're using something that you use every day in your pockets, your phone, to just easily set that fence and then move, guide, and move your cattle and monitor your cattle across those pastures. One thing that I'm really proud of is our people. This is all we do. Halter, what you see here in this product and the technology that we develop is the only thing that we do. We have about 200 folks globally at this point. These range from farmers, mothers, friends, veterans. Everyone you see here today is really aligned with the mission of the company, which is, again, to just help everyone here and cattle ranchers across the globe be more profitable and sustainable and productive. So I'm very honored to be here with these panelists to talk about this technology. I really believe just as smartwatches are now pretty much synonymous with a lot of users today, this is in a couple of years going to be kind of what you see in pastures as you drive across the country.
So you guys all sound fun. I don't know what it is. So I'm obviously not from these parts. So I'm a Kiwi from Dunedin, New Zealand, and very happy to be here today. Thank you very much for inviting us, and thank you very much to the previous talks. There is a lot of commonality, but there's also some significant differences, and that's your job. You need to go out there and figure out what's going to work for you. Where was I the other day? Baker. And a researcher said, I just want to know which product is the best. And actually, that's not going to work, because you all have very different properties, very different management solutions, and there is no one product that's going to meet every need. So it's great having a number of offerings here for you today. So eShepherd is a Gallagher product. Gallagher is a family-owned private business from New Zealand, been around for 86 years, and Bill Gallagher Sr., interestingly, was the inventor of the electric fence. So we have a little bit of knowledge in this space. So I am the thorn between two roses today. To my left I have JC Ellsworth, who's a rancher from South Dakota, and down the back there is another rancher from South Dakota, Cheyenne Lamley. They're both our customer engagement representatives. And you know, it's great hearing from the product people, but I also just want to point out Kimmy and Daniel Lichty down there in the back corner. Give us a wave, Daniel. You're going to hear from them later. Daniel has got some amazing stories, so I recommend you reach out to him. So.
Perfect. So this is our ES1 device on the right-hand side, and so I'll talk through some of the pieces here. It just clips together around the cow's neck like this, maybe. And then you're able to adjust the chain as well. I have some weak keyboard hands. So then you just go like that, clip it in, and then we have a locking pin. The device itself weighs about 5.5 pounds, and much of that is due to the solar panel and that surface area that we need. It's a very durable device. The solar panels even have a little give to them, and we will have them on the back table there if you want to come by and look at it. Animals must be at least 440 pounds to wear an eShepherd neckband, and much of that is due to the weight of the device. Much of the hardware was taken from other Gallagher products, so our electric fence reels, the weigh scales, and the solar panels similar to our fence energizers.
We've got the device, well actually in terms of customers out there across the USA, we started in 2003 with about 3 trial sites, and now we're over 100. So we've got lots of different situations, and I think that's the impressive thing for me in working with the ES1 is that it is very flexible. We have customers with 4 collars, we have customers with 400 collars. So we're also using it on bulls. Lots of customers around the world are using it only on bulls. very extensive situations where stocking rate is not so high, and then very intensive situations where they're moving animals multiple times a day, including bulls on crop as well. So lots of different use cases. As we've mentioned, the devices are solar powered. Those two big solar panels, they need a home, so that's why the size of the device it is, and they're going to be charging that internal battery all the time. So that's a long life battery. That's going to last for 7 to 10 years. So the device is going to be with you for a long, long time, and it's built very robustly. It needs to last. We have two forms of installation. So one is cellular, where you don't need a base station or a tower. So the neckband is connecting directly to Verizon or AT&T, for example. But then we also have the LoRa situation where you do need a base station or a tower. So come and talk to JC and Cheyenne about those differences. We also use audio and pulse, very similar to the other organisations. It's an IPX7 device, so it can be submerged to a metre for 30 minutes. And very encouraged to say that only last week we had a customer in Montana still grazing through the winter. I think he had them on 200 cow-calf pairs at minus 23 degrees Fahrenheit. So that was very pleasing to know. Comes with a warranty, and we are looking at delivering some behaviour and animal health traits later on this season. So trying to add value wherever we can.
I'll just add one thing, that IPX7 is due to the waterproof. So we did have a customer that had cattle get stuck in the dam. He was notified that they were down, and it was a couple hours before they got them pulled out, and they just went back to charging. So kind of a cool story there. Okay, you put the neckband on your cows. Now how are you going to draw your virtual fences? So most of the heavy lifting, we recommend you do that on your laptop. It's a web browser. You can log in from any computer anywhere in the world and manage your fencing there. And then we also have a mobile app. So on the mobile app, you're able to pull that out. If you're out in the pasture, you can turn virtual fences on and off from there, and also see where your animals are with that mobile app. The pricing. So you've got the neckbands on your cows, you've drawn your virtual fences, now you want to know what it's going to cost you. So as Cheryl mentioned, we have the two different options. So with our direct to cellular, you purchase the neckband, and then you have a monthly data charge. If you do need to go that base station route, you purchase the neckband, the base stations, and then there is a monthly data charge for that as well. You only get that monthly data charge in the months that you're using the neckbands. So they're made to be on animals year-round, but we know some customers are taking them off for the winter, so you're only paying that monthly data charge in the months that you're using them. So the neckbands are different, but the cost for each is, as long as you're purchasing 60, $250 per neckband. We do have a minimum of 4. So we have some customers that are just starting with bulls, kind of trying to learn the lay of the land and then how the system works. So you can purchase a minimum of 4 as well. And then this is kind of just showing how our system works. So our virtual fence line is about 6 foot wide. And so as the animal approaches that line, she gets a cycle of, it's a long 5-second audio followed by a pulse, and she gets that 3 times. There's a very critical training period with the cows, and so when you first put the neckbands on, we recommend if you can leave them in like a lock or a small pen for about 7 to 10 days to help them understand what that audio means. They're usually pretty responsive from there, and Charles is going to show a video on that. So
this is a Jersey bull on a crop of kale. And the point here is just to notice that the animal is responding to, we've even got me talking on the video. It's responding well to the audio only. So we'll just let it come back and repeat the video, but the animal's coming up to that line 3 times, only receiving audio and going, I'm going to give up. I can't get to the juicy kale on the left, so I'm actually going to go over and eat some hay on the right-hand side. So you can hear that audio tone. It backs off, tries to have another sneaky go, audio tone, backs off, and gives it one last go.
And I'll just add, most of our customers like with seasoned cows, and meaning they've even had them on for a couple months, we can see that audio to pulse ratio. And most of, especially the people doing that very intensive grazing, their cows are getting lots of audio, but not getting as many pulses because they're just clearly very unbothered by that audio cue and responding pretty well. So, okay, so this is a little look into our web app. So this is a customer over in California. It's 45,000 acres. And so the white lines are just representing all of their physical fence that they have. And then the little yellow teardrops are representing their cows. And then I'll just also point out to the bottom left that those brown teardrops are their bulls. So I know at home, there are some times of the year that I'm like, there shouldn't be a bull in there, and there is. And so you would be able to see there was a brown dot in those yellow dots. So I think that's pretty cool. And then this is just kind of a close-up of what that looks like. And so the orange solid line is that live virtual fence line. So this was within kind of a transfer period. They had just turned on that top virtual fence piece. And so you can see a couple cows had kind of figured that out and we're starting to move forward. But this was live in time, and I think they're on a 30-minute communication cycle. They are using our LoRa base station system, which you can see their base stations on that left-hand side there. So all the little black dots are showing where their base stations are located, and it's working out great for them. And it's about 311 cows, and this piece on the right that they're currently grazing is 340 acres. And they actually are calving right now, right?
They're calving.
Yep. So
with the collars on.
Yep. And then one other piece I'll just share. So they clearly have lots of water points marked. In the web app, you can add lots of different infrastructure if you want to. They've got lots of water. Some customers are marking bad water. So, just a reminder to yourself as you're planning your grazing, oh, I don't want to water out of this dam. And one customer further on the East Coast is doing very intensive bale grazing. And so he just set out a ton of bales and went in and put little yellow dots, like those blank ones there, indicating where his bales were. So then he kind of knows, okay, I have 3 here, and then I'm going to graze them here for X amount of days, graze them here for X amount of days. And using that, we have a scheduled moves feature. And so, people are scheduling out their rotations, for the next couple weeks or however far out you want to.
And lastly, just want to add Gallagher's commitment to animal welfare. Obviously, we've been around for 86 years, and we have a great relationship with lots of organisations who are very focused on animal welfare. But it's a really big part of Gallagher, but also the products. So there's many elements to the software and the neckband that conform to animal welfare. So we're very proud of that. Thank you very much.
I run our cows in national forest in the summertime, and it's pretty rugged. A lot of different drainages. How well does the systems that you have work where line of sight is limited?
I can start. So we designed the system to be able to operate in those rough and rugged areas with drainages, areas where we don't have coverage. So we'll do our best to put as much base station coverage as we can into those allotments where things are really rugged. But we also designed the system to still operate semi-autonomously. So let's say you wanted to keep them from going up into a drainage a little bit farther up, even though you don't have coverage once the cow kind of starts moving uphill. The collar, as long as you download the instruction for the virtual fence, and as long as the collar is updated and is like thumbs up, good to go, you can go up to those drainages even when it's out of coverage of the base station, and you'll still get the sound and the shock from the collar. So you'll have an autonomous level of operation. And the way I like to describe this is like if you have 100% coverage across your ranch, things are going to work faster. You're going to get more consistent location data from the collar every half an hour, and when you go to send an update to that collar, it's going to update within about an hour. So not instantaneously like a cell phone. This is just a result of using LoRa technology, but like higher level of flexibility, adaptability, and speed when you have perfect coverage. And then when we get into those situations where things are really, really rugged and we have maybe 60 to 80% coverage across the allotment, we can still operate there. We built knowing we're going to be able to do that. You're just going to make some sacrifices. It's just the reality of the situation. So you won't get as much location data coming off that collar. you may see a location from a day ago or 6 hours ago rather than every half an hour. And then when you go to send an update, it's going to take longer. Instead of 1 or 2 hours, it may take half a day or 2 days if it's really, really rugged. So we can still operate in those areas. You're just going to sacrifice, again, some of the speed, flexibility, and adaptability of the system. And it just gets down to expectations. We talk about all this with each operator that we work with. It really comes down to goals and then what you think the system's going to do. And we try and blend those two together and make sure that we're going to give you a good experience. And we'll be pretty honest if we think we're not. So that's the way we've been doing things for the past 3 or 4 years.
Very similar answer. I guess how I describe that is that the devices are actually quite intelligent. So the virtual paddock is stored on the device. So we don't need constant contact with a cellular provider or the base station. As long as we're getting GPS information from satellites, which is basically coming down 100% of the time, the device knows where that paddock is and how to contain the animal. So they're very intelligent.
I don't think I can add it. That was 2 amazing answers. I mean, we're in the same boat of the virtual fence gets sort of transmitted to the collar and stored on the collar. So if they do move away from that base station coverage, they'll still have that containment stored on the collar. I think one thing we'll add is it's on us as the vendors here to better technology as our ranchers utilize different terrain. So if it's a matter of, hey, towers and cell coverage doesn't work, that's on us to solve that in the next 6 months, a year, by using better technology that's coming to market as a whole.
Interested in the dependence on cell coverage for the technology.
Anyone else want to start?
Let's go backwards. I'll speak for Halter, but it's probably very similar. Is that tower? There's a big difference between the power of your phone in terms of the cellular reception and the power of the gateways that exist on these towers. So for ours, we rotate through basically every available network, T-Mobile, AT&T, Verizon, to ensure that we're getting the best cellular coverage. Our tower is about 30 feet in the air with pretty powerful antennas. So if you're walking around in your pastures and you're like, I have no cell service, there's probably a really good chance that we actually pick up cellular reception in those areas.
Again, similar answer. In going back to the cell phone story, generally speaking, we don't need 5 bars of cellular coverage. We just need 1 or 2. If you can send a text message, it's probably going to be fine. Remembering that the ES1 can talk directly to those cellular providers, or if the coverage isn't strong enough, then we use a tower, but the tower still needs to connect to the cellular providers. So at the moment, we need a cellular provider regardless of the technology.
Same answer. We'll work with you guys to determine how much cell coverage there is on the property. And the nice thing is, the cell companies use the same kind of radio technology we do. So they try to be up high where their cell towers are at, and then we try to be up high as well. So if you're down low and you don't have cell coverage, there is a possibility that you get up on the ridge line, you get up on the high points of the ranch. That's where the cell coverage exists. And that's where we're going to put our base stations anyway. So sometimes it's as easy as, yeah, we get cell coverage in these areas. We know that we're out there all the time, thumbs up. And sometimes it's, hey, I need you to hike over here and see if you have cell coverage because that might be a really good base station location. So again, sometimes very easy, quick RF plans, and sometimes they're a little bit more involved with the questions of access, permission, and cell coverage. But we designed it, that's why we use LoRa technology for power and data, but also because we're able to create a network across the ranch that doesn't rely on cell coverage everywhere.
John, I have a question for you. The ranch that you showed us near Salida, Colorado, could you share with us how many approximate acres are involved and how many base stations?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would call that like our marquee project. So we've been working there about 3 seasons, all through the Arkansas River Valley, mostly with the Forest Service. We have about 6, maybe 7 different producers. Started out about 3 or 4, I think, 3 years ago. And at this point, they're probably upwards of 20 base stations. And it covers ballpark 500,000 acres. And that's a lot of the ground that kind of, it's like everywhere in the West, private, and a little bit of BLM sometimes, and the Forest Service is up high. So it covers almost all the Forest Service for those 6 or 7 different producers. And it's a great model, because one of the questions that typically comes up is anyone going to be able to share my base station? And you can think about a base station kind of like a cell tower, right? We're all probably paying off the same cell tower right now, but only I can see my text, and only you can see yours. And then when I drive down the road, my cell phone just picks up the next cell tower, and I don't even know the difference. It's the same thing with base stations. We can have 6 or 7 producers running across a network of base stations that the Forest Service provides, but producer A only sees his callers, and producer B only sees their callers. Christy Wallner, the BLM in Eagle County, coined the phrase, it's the field of dreams approach. If you build it, they will come. So the BLM set up a bunch of infrastructure, and then all the producers simply purchased the callers, and they were able to get into the network and use virtual fencing.
But the producers are sharing the cost of the stations.
Exactly. Yep, exactly. And it reduces the barrier to entry, which is really nice, especially when you can share network infrastructure. And how we look at allotment, if we're going to look at just this allotment A here, our network may look totally different than if we're looking at A, B, and C all together, and it may be much more efficient. So we always try and think holistically in RF plans, especially with Forest Service and BLM.
John, I think your towers kind of work similar, where only one tower really needs cell service.
Exactly.
So like if those 20 towers, the 19 could totally not even have cell service. If one has a really strong connection, it'll actually transmit the signal to the other towers.
Ours is actually separate. That's good. I jumped on that too much actually. So our individual base stations have their individual cellular backhauls. So it's redundancy in the network, we like to call it. So if base station A goes down, then B and C still operate. So that's the approach that we've taken. But we did hub and spoke once or twice in Australia. We just don't have that solution here in the United States. We haven't needed it yet. Great point.
Yeah, more just a comment to the previous question on cell service. I think one thing we all need to remember is some of the changes and adaptations that our cell companies make in their towers, where they may change the actual power and ability of those towers to communicate sometimes, and they don't really let people know that. And so you really need to pay attention to that with all of your cellular type networks that you have on virtual fence, because we've had some scenarios where sometimes we've gotten really good coverage at a single location, and we come back the next year and they've manipulated the towers within that area on how much signal they were putting out based if they're going to LTE versus not. So just a caution to make sure you pay attention to that with your towers, because that can directly affect how those callers will perform.
Could you brush over like using this technology on like Forest Service, the BLM, and like, ownership, who owns the data, FOIA, all those things?
Yeah, absolutely. I can take that one first unless anyone wants to jump. So that's one of the main questions that has come up over the past 3 years. And we've worked a lot with Forest Service and BLM, and from our perspective, the person who puts the collars on the animals and owns the animals and signs the service level agreement owns the data. So we route all the data ownership through that person who signs that service level agreement, which is always the producer. We won't share that information or that data with anybody else unless they express consent or ask us to share it with them. So the way that we've worked with Forest Service and BLM, sometimes we have really engaged rain cons, and sometimes we have folks that aren't so engaged. And even in the situation when we have folks that are super engaged and want to work with the producer that's using virtual fence, we just make sure to use the computer for herd manager, the individual producer. We don't put anything on the government computers, and then that, in theory, shields us from any FOIA ability. So we're very protective about the data. We as a business have a license to use it to make the product better, which is just very reasonable, but we won't share it to anybody else.
Yep, same for eShepherd, you own the data. And sometimes we get the questions about the base stations, like is there data on the base stations? And the answer is no. So they are a transmission point only. The data just kind of goes through them and then up to the cloud.
If I were a BLM field office or a Forest Service, just forest, and I wanted to set up tower infrastructure, but I wanted my permittees to be able to choose who they go with, when is going to be the day that your towers are interchangeable so that people will have the ultimate flexibility?
Can I want to take a step. Can I flip this and say, when is the day when we don't even have towers? And I think that just goes back to like, this technology is going to advance rapidly as other technologies globally. Who's got like an iPhone? I think I have an iPhone 16, if anyone does. Like, I can text now through satellite. Like if I line up so like, I agree where interchangeable towers would be amazing. Towers are pretty much exactly the same. But I would flip that and say, when do we get to a point where you don't even need towers to begin with?
So when is that?
I'm not at liberty to say. If any of the product folks were watching this, they would light me up if I gave you that date. But I'll give you a wink. I'll give you a wink on that one.
I'm also very excited for that as well. The question is going to be cost, right? Like, so the way that the system works right now is we send a lot of what's called packets, like individual pieces of data, and we send a lot of those up. And that's kind of what the first devices that are going to use that direct to satellite are going to use. Think of like a lipstick container with a battery and a shipping container, and says at once an hour, like this is where I am for tracking, right? They're going to build a direct to satellite model for those types of devices that send data up. We send a lot of that data up, but we also send it down. And the downlink is what's really expensive. So I'm very excited for that well. I don't want to like hold my breath and say it's going to be anytime soon, because it's going to be one, it has to exist first, and then it has to be able to do downlink, and then it has to be cheap enough so you say, I'm going to put that collar on my cow and it's actually going to make sense financially versus, it's $500 a year and like it doesn't make financial sense. So there's a few pieces in there, but I'm also very excited about that because then it means we can virtually fence it everywhere and makes it a lot simpler.
So you're saying there's a day?
Someday,
I'll say there's a day.
It's like, I don't know.
I'll say there's a day.
It's a while, I personally believe, yeah. That's what the engineers tell me at least.
No, and same response here. It's this technology is evolving quickly, and it's going to continue to evolve. I think one thing I'm aware of is that yes, we can innovate, but actually that innovation is going to come from you in terms of how you use the technology. So we're going to continue to learn from you, and you need to tell us what you want.
I'm going to skip a page here. Can I use this for a lot more advanced cattle management than just keeping them in containment? For instance, what if I got 600 cows, eastern Wyoming, big plains, and I know when 150 were in heat Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, unique individuals. I need them in a corral for their embryo next week. Would it be effective to sort them in their big pasture? My guys only have to gather 150 because I don't have corral big enough for all 600. Is that a scenario that works?
Yeah, go for it.
I think the providers will probably speak to this as well, as like, so if you look at where Halter specifically started, we started on dairy in New Zealand, which is extremely intensive operations. I think it was like the air traffic control system for like San Francisco versus for beef, which is mostly location and containment. It's more like a dirt running strip. I think it kind of comes down to how you use the product. Yes, all the technologies here, you can color code your cattle in different colors in the app. You can name them in the app. So if I'm a producer and I have your scenario, I would probably separate my herds and color code them separately. And then that way I can say, I'm gonna slowly bring my cattle in by creating a virtual break for, let's say, the blue dot ones. And then I'm gonna shift those blue ones to one area, and maybe I shift the rest of the herds to another area. They're gonna get separate commands. So for Halter, the way it works is, if I have them in a break, and I want to shift them to a new break, I draw that new break, and then what will happen is they will get that vibration command when they're pointing to the new area, which says, hey, there's fresh grass, go get it. And usually if you're running it intense enough, they know that grass is there. So when they're trained, which takes hours, if not days, they know that vibration means fresh grass. So they'll get up, they'll move, they'll go to the area, and you can slowly separate your herds. We have ranchers that will bring their cattle closer when they're coming in, if they need to run through the chutes, or something else. In dairy, we actually can bring them back to the sheds automatically, just by saying, hey, come back, and they pretty much know twice a day that they're gonna get milk. So it's kind of on you as a producer with us and our customer success team, just like the other providers, of helping you operationalize it but the data and the insights is there for you to be able to do those things. Is it a one-click out-of-the-box solution for you to do? Not quite. Did that kind of answer your question?
A bit. So you have the ability to know every collar with ID of animal on it.
Correct.
And you can change individuals' location.
Correct.
And it will help move them there.
Correct.
So from an animal behavior situation, will they do that, or they're like, I'm not going because she's not?
So they are herd animals at the end of the day. They're going to want to stick together. I think it depends on how you move your herds. If you've historically run them as one herd, it's probably going to be hard to separate them. And I would ask, like, what do you do if you were to split them manually right now? They're probably going to want to go back to one herd at the end of the day. So I would say if that's sort of your long-term goal, how do you run them as separate herds? Maybe you're grazing them in different areas, but cattle are smart. They understand the cues. They understand where the fresh grass is. So we do have ranchers who are able to split their herds from one herd and then move them separately. If you're running them right next to each other, probably not going to be the best outcome for you. But if you are moving them further away from each other, it would work. If you guys want to add.
Yes. and I'm going to say, listen to Daniel. He's got some great stories about that.
Okay.
I'll just say one thing I'm excited for is pulling bulls, so fencing them out separately. Not to be dramatic, but I've almost died a million times pulling bulls, and so I'm excited to not have to go out there and just be able to fence them out.
I would say give it a go, see if it works. We experiment all the time. We had someone a couple years ago that sex sorted into 2 different herds, but I'm not gonna sell you this product saying like it's going to do that, right? I'm gonna go with what we're good at, blocking and tackling, make sure you're happy, make sure you're satisfied, and say, hey, maybe we'll be able to do this. There's limits to the technology, but we're always experimenting and learning, and something might work for one operation or not for another, so it's hard to answer that definitively, but we're always happy to experiment and help you with it.
I'm not sure I'm ready to jump out $150,000 to do an experiment.
Actually, that's a really good point. So this stuff isn't cheap, okay? Even with funding, it's still not cheap. And we have customers coming in and saying, I've got 1,000 cows, and so tell me the price. And I've said to people who have rung me, I'm not going to sell you 1,000 neck bands because there's a learning curve involved. I'll sell you 100, and we'll just go along the journey. But it takes adaptation from the cows and you guys. There's a learning curve.
And I will add to that, we do at the very end of the day have a partners and funders panel. There's a lot of people looking to help support landowners. So definitely talk to those people, talk to the partners that are on the East Yellowstone Collaborative. Many of our organizations are interested in supporting this technology. And the more we learn about it and the more it advances, I think the more you're going to see people wanting to help fund and get that implemented.
I guess my question would go back to the price of it. You guys were saying around $250 a collar. Does that buy you, I guess, the service for a certain amount of years, or like you're saying, the new technology comes out and you can get hooked up to Starlink or whatever? We pay $250 a year for collars this year. You get that new technology next year. Are we going to have to put out another $250 a collar, or is it kind of you're buying a service per each collar, I guess?
Yep, I'll explain that further. So we operate with a full purchase model. So you're buying them and you own the eShepherd device. Cheryl mentioned 7 to 10 year lifespan with our device. So in year 1, you're going to pay that 250 times however many neck bands, and then the only ongoing price you will have is that monthly data charge. So assuming you'll buy the neck bands and then I guess base station if you need them in that year 1, and then once you start using your neck bands, you start paying that monthly data charge, and that's the only ongoing cost from there. So that's allowing you, that monthly data charge is covering when you draw the virtual fence on the internet, sending it up to the cloud into the neck bands.
But backward compatibility is key. So we're not going to sell you something and then come out with something again in a year's time that you can't use. So the firmware and the software on the browser is being updated all the time. We're probably all making releases to our products all the time. So we just keep on updating it, and you don't have to pay any more for that.
Our pricing model is pretty simple. collar is $40 per collar per year. That's a subscription. It includes all the software, all the customer support, and a working collar. So if you have anything that breaks, we replace it for you. And then same thing, if we have another version of the collar comes out, when you have an opportunity to recollar those animals, we of course will want the latest in the field on animal, so we'll swap those out for you with no fee. Just continue to pay that $40 per collar per year. Then there's the battery, it's $10 a pop. Most folks are one battery per year if they're grazing seasonally in the West, so consider it $50 per collar. And then base stations are $10,000 per unit. You purchase it, you own it, there's no recurring fee. That's kind of like your setup network infrastructure. And most folks are between like 2 and 4 base stations for their operations if they're like, 10 to 40,000 acres for the most part. We also have the events assisted install option as well if you want us to send out one of our deployment technicians. Used to help us build the base station, get it out to the site, lend us some hands, but we'll facilitate the deployment, bring our own tools, and those are $12,500 per unit. And most Forest Service, BLM, or NGOs will offer the events assisted.
So I know John touched on sort of the breakaway system. I'm assuming you all have them. How easy is that to replace? Like you go doctor a cow and break her collar off in the process. Is that something the guys then have to pack with them, extra tools?
So for ours, Charlotte's showing you, so the orange rubber piece is the top strap that is made to break away. So ours has 750-pound resistance. You can buy replacement packs. I think it's $20 for a pack of 3. And then, so yeah, they would be carrying that with them.
Yeah, same breakaway technology. I would say if it's in a situation where collars are breaking at a higher frequency, that's an us problem, not a you problem. And we would know that's happening, and we would jump on that and send you new collars and try to identify. We use that as a learning opportunity.
Plastic link at the top, you'll have a bunch of replacements. If you need a couple more, we'll just send them to you. And then in terms of getting the collar back on the animal, it's opportunistic, right? You guys have the opportunity to do it, great, but we still see really good efficacy if we have 98% of the cows collared, right? The herd instincts are strong enough that we don't need 100% collared 100% of the time to have good efficacy from a grazing perspective. If we start to get 10, 20% fall off, then that's a different situation, but we've been pretty good retention this past year, so we shouldn't have to deal with that.
Because that was my question, what's the retention rate you guys see on like in the forest, in the thick brush, thick trees? What kind of retention do you have with these collars?
I would say, it's on the higher side. I'm not going to say it's perfect. I would put it back to say, depends on how you're drawing those containment areas. If you're going to run them in thick brush, a lot of stuff's going to happen regardless, outside of a collar, outside of anything. And sort of if you want them to operate in that really thick terrain, really thick vegetation, just know that, hey, there's going to be a chance that a cow could brush up against it. But all the providers here do extensive testing. Like, for instance, like if we want to learn a certain type of cattle, we're doing a lot of research right now with like Brahman. We have 20 people that fly out from the company. We're testing extensively, and so while it's not perfect, we're investing a lot of resources to get there. But it's definitely on the higher side, especially like I can send you a photo with the counterweight that sits on here. There's not a lot of space between the neck and this collar. It's pretty tight to the cow, and you can adjust, like any of these products, you can adjust it to be pretty tight. So there's not a lot of, you'd have to really get a strong stick to get up in there or something to cause a breakaway.
And based on the statistics that we get back from the data, it's 98.5%, but 1% actually is issues with paddock design or some ranches being a little bit more relaxed sometimes. I'm going to say, 0.5% is due to the animal, but it's very high. It's very high, and it's great.
Yeah, we swapped to lock and carabiners at some point last year, and that's been great for us retention-wise. The Kimseys are going to share some information later, and I might ask them to share about their retention. But a little bit of, you can put the collar on snug. You don't think the collar's going, or the animal's going to put too much weight on, and then you can leave a little bit more more swing if you think they're gonna, put on some pounds. So it comes down to a little bit of that, especially if you're gonna be in timber and whatnot, but we want these collars to fall off when they're supposed to fall off. It's a fine line. So you'll have some collars that fall off, but again, if you have 95% retention, you're still gonna get really good virtual fencing efficacy, so that's our goal.
I'm a range specialist for the BLM, and we would like to buy the towers for our permittees, but I have 3 permittees. One wants to run Vents, one wants to run Halter, one wants to run East Shepherd. Do your guys' collars work interchangeably amongst the towers, or am I gonna have to buy a tower from each of you and then coordinate with, like Jason Findell, the Forest Service is gonna run another company?
Yeah, I mean, the short answer is that at the moment, the solutions are all proprietary. So they don't talk to each other. Yeah, is that fair?
Yeah.